that just an incredible?
Yes.
Thank you, Jane, so much for creating that. And I would like to say that Jane is the team leader for the Earth Care team. And we have others here today too. Michael is on our team, and also we have Suki, and Tommy, and Rachel, and I'm forgetting somebody. Carol Wallace,
Wallace, Carol Wallace, yeah.
and I'm on it too. Anyway, so we've all come together today to make this hopefully a wonderful Earth Day experience for you. And we also have our young people coming up at the end of the service to share a song as well. So I'd like to begin with talking a little bit about, if you put up that, that's me. Go ahead, do the next one. All right, so some of you, I don't know how many of you have seen me down in the garbage. I know that some of you have seen me down there, right? You've seen me down there. So you might be shaking your heads and kind of saying to yourself, you know, what in the world is that girl doing? Well, what she's doing is taking things out of the trash and putting them in the recycle bin. And why is she doing this? Because if we don't recycle, then we are adding more trash to our world. And so all of you coming in should have gotten one of these cards. So what I did when I was digging through the trash the other day was looking for the particular things that we throw in the trash here that could go in the recycle bin. So these are some of the things that I have found. Containers like this, containers like this, even our paper plates and bowls and forks and things can go in as long as they don't have food on. So they have to be washed out, and we may not want to do that. If they've got food on, we have to throw them away. And also, though, all of these little cups like this, they can go in the recyclable. And I see bunches of us come in who live here a lot and eat here, then bring our food here, we bring in bags. Now the thing inside the bag you probably got to throw away, but the bag it comes in, that can be recycled. And all of these metal pans, if they're clean, we can recycle them. So I just wanted you to know that I've been looking in the garbage, moving things from one place to the other. So, and you might ask, well, why am I doing that? That's not that big a deal. But it is a big deal. It's a big deal because we do want to protect and love this beautiful planet that we live on. And anything that we can do to make a difference is important. Some would say that I have come a long way in 3 years because 3 years ago, garbage cans were not on my radar screen. Today they are. And so I'd like to kind of share my odyssey with you about how I got from them not being on my radar screen to being important. But first, I invite you to take a moment, close your eyes, and ask yourself this question. When I consider the condition of our world, I think things are getting, just fill in the blank. If that question creates a sense of uncertainty in you, a feeling that just kind of doesn't go away, just an unspoken presence in the back of your mind, then you are where I was 3 years ago. Thus, the big question is, how can we ever begin to tackle the mess that we've created if we consider it too depressing to even look at? So this is where we begin, by acknowledging that our times confront us with realities that are painful to face. However, thank goodness, it doesn't end there. Actually, it becomes the starting point of an amazing journey that strengthens us and deepens our aliveness. The purpose of our journey today is to receive the gift of active hope. There are 3 stories of our time. One is called Business as Usual. If you put that slide up there. This one assumes that economic growth is essential for prosperity, that nature is a commodity to be used for human purposes, that promoting consumption is good for our economy. The central plot in this, the business as usual, is getting ahead, no matter what the costs are. The problem of other peoples, nations, and species is not the concern of the group who belongs in the business as usual. The second story is the story of the great unraveling. This scenario talks about economic decline, resource depletion, climate change, social division and war, and mass extinction of species. The story of business as usual is putting us on a collision course with disaster. And by itself, the great unraveling, which we see here, can seem like a horror story that overwhelms and defeats us, as witnessed by the pictures that you saw in the foyer. I don't know if any of you looked at those coming in, but those will depress you when you look at them. There's one in particular that shows you this mountain of plastic bottles, and it says that that mountain is what we produce or create every hour.
Wow.
It's huge. I mean, just look at it when you go out and see what I'm talking about. So that, and the problem, or fortunately though, there is a third story. And that one is one that I call the Great Turning. And that's what I want to talk about today. 3 years ago, I dated a guy, very briefly, who turned out to be my personal wake-up call. I realized that he belonged to the second story, the gloom and doom story. However, my understanding of unity principles kicked in. Being aware that we create our reality by the thoughts we hold in mind, I realized that I did not want to buy into this story of the great unraveling. I immediately began to look for a different story, one that I could believe in and give energy to. I did not want to add any more energy to the great unraveling scenario. And about that time, I heard Joanna Macy speak and read her book, Active Hope, which we have a couple copies down in the bookstore. This was truly transformational for me. I knew I had found my answer, and I began to learn how I could become a part of the great turning. This third story, the story of the great turning, is held and embodied by those who know that the first story, business as usual, is leading us to catastrophe, and who refuse to let the second story, the great unraveling, have the last word.
Yep.
The great turning is about the transition from an industrial society committed to economic growth at any cost to a life-sustaining society committed to the healing and recovery of our world. There are 3 dimensions to the great turning. If you could show the first one. That's one. They come in no particular order. All of them need to be addressed. The first one that I've written there, but like I said, it's kind of more like a circle rather than linear, are holding actions. And this is represented by the table that we have here in front of us, where we're just trying to protect our environment with that. Its aim is to hold back and slow down the damage being caused by the actions of business as usual. There are many ways that we can act, and I know that some of you in here do these kinds of things. We can choose to remove our support for behaviors and products that we know to be a part of the problem.
Amen.
We can join with others and can add to the strength of campaigns, petitions, boycotts, legal proceedings, and other forms of protest that threaten our world. And these holding actions are essential. They save lives, they save species and ecosystems. But by themselves, they are not enough for this great turning to occur. So the second dimension, life-sustaining systems and practices, involves us rethinking the way we do things, as well as a creative redesign of the structures and systems that make up our society. It asks the question, is there a better way to do things? One that brings benefits instead of doing harm. Our choices about where we shop, what to buy, and how to save help develop a new economy. So I wanted to show you something. I just had a birthday this week, by the way.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Anyway, my son's girlfriend made me this incredible German chocolate bundt cake. And my son gave me paper plates and forks. And I'm like, paper plates and forks? Okay, thank you, son, for a nice present. But then when I read them, I went, these plates are made from wheat straw, not trees. And these forks are made from corn, not petroleum.
Wow.
Is that not cool? So all of a sudden his present was a lot more exciting. So I said, okay, I just won't open it for my birthday. I will bring it as a prompt for our presentation here. So another example that we have right here in our congregation, some of you have begun, and this is again looking at sustaining systems and practices. Some of you have begun participating in a CSA, where we buy locally grown food. And when we do that, we do three things. We support our economy, the local economy. We cut down on the cost of farm to market fuel consumption, and we get to eat healthy food. Imagine that. Some of you have been bringing your plastic containers to church so that we are not adding to the pile of garbage that goes into our city's waste. And hopefully we will be getting some of these again in the bookstore. They were there for a while, and fortunately y'all bought them all up. So now we've got to get a new supply. But be looking for them, because if you can bring these to church on Sunday, then we're not wasting the paper plates and other things like that. And at the same time, though, I want to say to you that I don't always remember to bring mine, and that's okay. It's okay for us not to remember. We just need to be conscious and doing our best. So when I forget, I say to myself, I may start to beat up on myself, like, oh, Charlotte, you should have done it, blah, blah. And then I'll go, I love and accept myself just the way I am. Thanks to Ellie's class on tapping, I'm ready to let go of those kinds of things. So, anyway, get back to now the third dimension is called a shift in consciousness. And this is really where I want to spend the rest of our time together this morning, because it is the shift in consciousness that motivates us to get involved with these other two dimensions. So how does one get there? To become a part of the great turning, it's important to develop a wider sense of self. How many of you have seen the movie Avatar? In this epic adventure, the central character appears fully equipped for the challenge he faces. And we can feel that way too. I know that 3 years ago, whenever I thought about all these issues of our times, I simply felt overwhelmed. But just as Jake Sully in Avatar experienced a transformation, we can also experience a comparable transformation as we begin to see ourselves, have a wider sense of self that allows us to see ourselves differently and thus enhances our ability to make a difference in the world. So the first concept we're going to look at is the idea of selfishness. Some people believe that we are genetically programmed to put our comfort and convenience before the interests of others in the world. But what if we could transform the expression of selfishness by widening and deepening the self for whom we act? To quote Arnie Mace, unhappily, the extensive moralizing within the ecological movement has given the public the false impression that they are being asked to make a sacrifice, to show more responsibility, more concern, and a nicer moral standard. But all of that would flow naturally and easily if the self were widened and deepened so that protection of nature was felt and perceived as protection of our very selves. But let's work our way up to this idea of widening ourselves to the point where we see ourselves as part of nature. Imagine that I kept asking you the question, tell me who you are. Tell me who you are. Tell me who you are. Did you discover that you described yourself as a member of a family, a member of a team at work perhaps, or a member of a spiritual community? Let me ask you, do we think we're doing something special when we help our family? No. We view it as entirely normal. It's even taken for granted. In a similar way, when we feel a part of a team or a circle of friends, it's natural to give our support without charging by the hour or asking what's in it for us. And have we not already widened our sense of self to include our unity family? There is so much more to us than our separate self. Our connected self is based on recognizing that we are part of many larger circles. Here you see family, group, community, and human society. So the distinction between selfishness and altruism is misleading. It's presented as a choice between helping ourselves and helping others. But it loses all meaning when we think of ourselves as connected selves. And it is from the connected self that much of what we most value in life emerges, such as love, friendship, loyalty, trust, belonging, gratitude. The philosopher Immanuel Kant makes a distinction between moral acts and beautiful acts. He says we tend to perform moral acts out of a sense of obligation or duty. We do beautiful acts when we do what is morally right because we are motivated by desire rather than duty. When our connected self is well developed, then we are more often drawn to beautiful acts. So I want to challenge each of us here today to expand the circle we just looked at even wider. Wide enough to include the animals, the forest, the air we breathe. Arnie Nice introduced the term, never mind, it's okay. Arnie Nice introduced the term ecological self to describe this wider sense of identity that arises when our self-interest includes the natural world. When we include the natural world, we are brought into a much larger story of who and what we are. When we recognize ourselves as part of the living body of Earth, it opens up a great source of strength. When asked how he handles despair, rainforest activist John C. said, "I try to remember that it's not me, John C., trying to protect the rainforest. Rather, I am part of the rainforest protecting itself. I am that part of the rainforest recently emerged into human thinking." Isn't that cool? For those of us living in cities, it's particularly easy to lose touch with the fact that we arise out of nature and are part of it. But we wouldn't have the air we breathe if it weren't for plant life and plankton. We wouldn't have the food we eat if we didn't have soil, plants, pollinating insects, and other forms of life. When we carry within us a deep appreciation of how our life is sustained by other living beings, We strengthen our desire to give back. When we looked at the first 3 levels of the wider sense of self slide, it pointed to things and people, interactions that everyone can observe. With this 4th level, which includes the web of life, we are describing an experience that leaves us feeling held and supported, even when there's nobody else around, and nothing particular that we're doing. We call this 4th context eco-spiritual because it's about our felt relationship to the wider dimensions of reality. To be a part of this great turning requires a shift in consciousness. We can think of this shift as one that puts the healing of our world at the very center of things. On this map, our community is all of life. All of life. So we know the trees, the insects, and birds as our extended family, as part of our larger ecological self. I'd like to read a short poem from Joanna Macy's book. When you act on behalf of something greater than yourself, you begin to feel it acting through you with a power that is greater than your own. This is grace. Today, as we take risks for the sake of something greater than our separate individual lives, we are feeling graced by other beings and by Earth itself. Those with whom and on whose behalf we act give us strength and eloquence and staying power we didn't even know we had. We just need to practice knowing that and remembering that we are sustained by each other in the web of life. Our true power comes as a gift, like grace, because in truth it is sustained by others. If we practice drawing on the wisdom and beauty and strengths of our fellow human beings and our fellow species, we can go into any situation and trust that the courage and intelligence required will be supplied. This morning, our focus has been on how we strengthen our capacity to contribute to the great turning in the very best way we can. Whatever situation we face, we can choose our response. Passive hope is about waiting for external agencies to bring about something that we desire. But active hope is about becoming active participants in bringing about what we hope for. But active hope isn't just words. It is a practice. Like Tai Chi or gardening, it is something we do rather than something we have. It's a process that involves 3 simple steps. Take a clear view of reality, identify what you hope for, and take steps to move yourself in that direction. The guiding impetus here is intention. We choose what we aim to bring about. Rather than weighing our chances and proceeding only when we feel hopeful, we focus our intention and let it be our guide. So the purpose of today's message has been to strengthen and support your intention to act so that we can best play our part, whatever it is, in the healing of our world. Since we each look out from a different corner of our world and bring with us our own particular portfolio of interests, skills, and experience, we are touched by different concerns and called to actually respond in different ways. So as we go into our time of meditation now, let us listen to the sounds of nature. Let your heart-mind reflect on all of the things that you are grateful for and ask yourself, how will I choose to be a part of the great turning? The contribution each of us makes to the healing of our world is our gift of active hope.